Sam Seder here. This is the live broadcast of the Majority Report. And as you probably have heard, there's a bit of a YouTube apocalypse that has been going on. Many news and politics channels have lost their advertising because of an algorithm that Google has implemented as a function of ads showing up on hate-filled channels. Well, we got caught up in that, and it doesn't look like it's going to be resolved. So we need your help. You've probably heard from other channels that they're asking people to donate to a Patreon site. We are asking the same so that we can operate this YouTube feed without a cost to us. I mean, we don't look at YouTube as a huge revenue maker for us, but we need your help so that we're not losing money on it. So head over to our Patreon site. Here is the URL. We need your help. Just a couple of bucks, $2-3 a month would really help us out. Thanks so much and enjoy the show. Hi, folks.
With Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Wednesday, May 3rd, 2017. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 4-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, economics and business writer for The Week, Jeff Spross. On the job guarantee. Also on the program, Republicans realizing Nancy Pelosi rolled them on the budget. And they can't seem to do anything about it. Meanwhile, Republicans also desperately trying to pass anything on replace and repeal before they go on vacation on Friday. These guys take more vacation than I do.
I hate Nancy Pelosi so much. I hate her. She is the devil bitch Antichrist. I hate her.
Democrats and the left winning at small ball. Signs of a potential tsunami? Then surprise, Trump was pissed that someone had released pictures comparing his inauguration crowd to President Obama's.
We will find you.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is sort of tough to talk about, but a new book reveals that Ivanka Trump had to give up massages during the campaign.
Sacrifice.
Yeah.
Actually, why?
Well,
She
we'll
would
get
still-
to
yeah,
that
that
later.
doesn't make any
Come on, I'm
sense.
trying to get through this, and it's choking me up a little bit.
Sorry.
Meanwhile, it appears Gorka may not be gone. And an update on that story that David Dayan had for us, I guess a week or two ago, on the pharmacy benefit managers. And lastly, a Dallas cop fired. Charges we don't know yet after killing a teen in a car being rowdy and leaving a party. Unbelievable. All that and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get. I just want to do this. There's a story I teased yesterday and didn't get to it, but it is apropos of what we're discussing today, because as much as we are seeing, small signs of electoral success by Democrats in small races around the country. In Lincoln, Nebraska, I think last night or 2 nights ago, they flipped the city council. Does that indicate that they'll win the Omaha mayoral seat, which would maybe indicate or help that they would win that one of those 3 Nebraskan congressional districts? Those are all questions. I'm not going to actually ask them in form of questions. I'm just going to have a rising intonation. Who knows? We also are 3 weeks away from the race in Montana, where Rob Quist is running, and the DCCC has just dumped $400,000 into that race. There was a primary winner in the South Carolina seat to replace Mick Mulvaney, who is the very odd, in my opinion, Office of Budget Management Director, the budget director for the administration, I should say. Former Tea Party guy, or I should say Freedom Caucus guy. That guy who won that primary, a former Goldman Sachser, but also very, very is leveraging that experience, saying he knows where all the bodies are buried when it comes to overseas taxes. He apparently was a tax lawyer there. I don't know how much of his change of heart, but, this is South Carolina and Mick Mulvaney's seat. So there are sort of buds, if you will, little sprouts, as we sometimes see in the springtime. But as you know, there was, it turns out, to be more or less an autopsy performed on the losses sustained by Democrats in the last election. Not just the presidential level, but there were losses across the board. And one finding from the polling has been highlighted. Now, much of this stuff hasn't been made public yet. But according to the Washington Post, I think this was Waldman, a shockingly large percentage of Obama to Trump voters said that Democrats' economic policies will favor the wealthy. Wow. Twice the percentage that said the same about Trump.
Unbelievable.
And that's what the polling said. Apparently, Waldman watched some of the focus group activity. And this is Priorities USA. This is Super PAC that I guess is dedicated to restoring Democrats to power. They conducted these focus groups of Obama to Trump voters in Wisconsin and Michigan. Those, of course, are the two big states where Clinton lost by, I think it's 10 and 14,000 votes respectively. And also, you had a place where Russ Feingold lost in Wisconsin. This was in late January. They polled 800 of these Obama to Trump voters. They also they polled 800 drop-off voters, people who voted for Obama in 2012 but didn't vote in 2016. And these are some of the quotes they heard. Clinton and the Democrats' economic message did not break. This is from Priorities USA conclusion. Did not break through to drop-off or Obama-Trump voters, even though drop-off voters are decidedly anti-Trump. So they're, even those people who are anti-Trump didn't come out and vote against him. 50% of Obama to Trump voters said their incomes are falling behind the cost of living. Another 31% said their incomes are merely keeping pace with the cost of living. A sizable chunk of Obama to Trump voters, 30%, said their vote for Trump was more of a vote against Clinton than a vote for Trump. These are Obama voters 4 years earlier. 42% of Obama to Trump voters said congressional Democrats' economic policies will favor the wealthy. 42%. 21% of them said the same thing about Trump. Only 40% say that about congressional Republicans. For whatever reason, these people were not getting a moderately accurate picture, right? I mean, it may be true that Democratic economic policies will favor the wealthy, but it is definitively more true of the Republicans. A total of 77% of Obama-Trump voters said Trump policies will favor some mix of all other classes, middle class, poor, all equally, while a total of 58% said that about congressional Democrats. With the drop-off voters, similar dynamic. Priorities USA polling found that 43% of them said their income is falling behind the cost of living. 49% said their incomes were merely keeping pace. Skepticism about the Democratic Party was echoed rather forcefully in the focus group that he had watched. Obama to Trump voters were asked what Democrats stand for today and gave answers such as these: the 1%, the status quo. They're in it for the party themselves and the party. The Democrats, for whatever reason, ranging from perhaps some of their policies, undoubtedly not holding a certain sector of the 1%ers accountable, the bankers. But also, I think we're so late in the game in actually providing any real policy agenda that also could resonate with people. So not to say that on a marginal basis there wasn't some proposals. Well, that brings us to Jeff Spross with his proposal, and this has been going around for a long time, of a job guarantee, otherwise known as the employer of last resort. If you're a Democrat out there and you're looking for a proposal, I mean, we have expansion of Social Security that takes care of you in your pension. We have proposals out there to expand Medicare, introduced in the House, and I think soon to be, if not already, in the Senate by Bernie Sanders. Here's one to deal with jobs. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Jeff Spross. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome to the program Jeff Spross. He is the economics and business writer for The Week, and his latest, You're Hired, in the journal. Where was the piece in, Jeff?
It's in a quarterly magazine called Democracy Journal, which
Right.
is like it comes out 4 times a year, and it's kind of this magazine that just tries to pitch big ideas for like how to reform American society.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I just I prefaced your appearance with at least what we know, or the little that we know from some of the, I guess, autopsy from the last election, where Priorities USA had polled 800 Obama to Trump voters and 800 drop-off voters. Those were Obama voters in 2012 who didn't bother to show up. And there wasn't necessarily unanimity, but there was a strong contingent that felt that Democrats were working for the 1%, were not providing them with any major proposals to deal with stagnating wages. And you make the point at the beginning of your piece that we don't hear that much of an emphasis about jobs from Democrats, at least relative to what we heard from Trump during the last election.
Yeah, I think one thing you notice certainly in the Clinton campaign platform, and even in the Sanders platform, though to a less extent, is that while they certainly talk about jobs as a good thing, it's often seen as sort of like the second order thing that happens because we did something else good, like invested in clean energy or expanded some kind of social welfare program so people had more money to spend in the economy. Trump was kind of unique in that he was really just like, I'm going to get you jobs, like straight up, that's what I'm going to do, just went right at the issue.
Right, almost like he almost did the opposite, it seems like. Every one of his policies was a function of because it would help jobs.
Right, yeah, and I mean, I can go on, I'm a left-wing guy, I can go on all day about how terrible I think his stance on immigration is, for instance, but like the fact, the narrative that immigration, like other people coming to the country, makes it harder for people here to get jobs, which like I can also go on about like the economic problems with that, but that's clearly a narrative to some extent about jobs. He's saying like, we need to do this. We need the border wall to protect Americans economically here. I mean, he also characterizes this in terms of crime and sort of thing, but economics is also clearly part of the picture.
Yes, indeed, and just trade more generally, I guess. But all right, let's just. Why would we need something like the job guarantee or employer of last resort, as you call it?
Okay. Actually, to start off, should I explain to your audience what it is, or
please? Yeah, do.
Are they already up?
Yeah, do.
Okay, so I think the easiest way to explain the job guarantee is like during the Obamacare debate, there was the idea of the public option for health insurance, right? It was a package of insurance that would be provided by the government. You didn't have to take it, but it was always there for you if you wanted. And the job guarantee is basically a public option for employment. If you want a job, you don't have to get a job with the job guarantee program. But if you do want it, it's there for you, and they will find something useful to do for you to do in your community, and they will pay you a living wage and give you like health benefits and quite possibly some kind of retirement benefits like in exchange.
Well, first off, have we had anything like this in the past? Because it's the WPA, the Work Progress Administration, which I guess was basically from, I don't know, mid-30s until maybe just after the war, and 40 or before the war ended, for about 5 or 6 years during the mid-30s. Where does that rate? Is that the closest we've had to something like that in this country?
That's probably the closest we've had. We've had several other projects like through the 70s and 80s where we provided this kind of public employment opportunity for young people, that sort of thing. But the Works Progress Administration and several other programs during the New Deal were probably the most ambitious and the longest lasting. They didn't employ everybody, but they employed everybody who needed a job. But they employed a lot of them. And for the time they existed, I mean, you can see like a really clear and dramatic effect on unemployment numbers in the, they clearly like really aided in the recovery from the Great Depression.
So, I mean, let's go into the specifics of what of how this would work. Like, what kind of job? Where would the jobs come from?
So, there are several economists who have sort of like been working on this idea for a while. One of them is Pavlina Cherneva, who works at the Levy Institute, among other places. But one of the things she points out is that if you look at like civic organizations around the country, we're talking like, people who do community beautification, people who work on cleaning up public parks, ecological reclamation, refurbishing old buildings, all this sort of stuff. Like these needs are usually present in just about every community. And for the most part, they're helped out by volunteer work and they're perpetually understaffed. And so the idea is that like if you had a government agency that had like, there'd be a federal part that like provides like some overall guidelines and the funding, but then you'd have like community branches that would go out and talk to the community and say like, what projects are you guys trying to do that you clearly feel would be helpful and valuable for your community that you just can't find the people to do. And the case Cherneva in particular makes that like there's just an enormous amount of that. And a lot of times people worry like we just can't employ everybody in the economy. And to a large extent, that's kind of a failure of imagination. It's like, let's try this and see how much useful stuff we could actually find.
Well, I mean, give me a sense of like what that would look like in different communities. I mean, those jobs.
So,
I mean, I guess it's like it's a little bit easier for me to have a concept of it in New York, right? I mean, just because there seems to be such a staffing need, and you, in many respects, have so much infrastructure that already exists. One can imagine what those would be. Although I would love to hear some examples of jobs there. But what if you're in a small town or a city of 50,000 people, let's say?
Well, I mean, I think you could, in a small town, you could imagine, first off, like road fixtures, like repairing. I mean, even there's local infrastructure. There might be water pipe issues, electrical access, internet access, particularly in rural communities, is a big thing. So expanding all of those could be things you could hire people for. Again, like soil conservation is a big issue in agricultural communities. I mean, I could imagine just like repairing fences for all the different ranches around, like just outside the town, that kind of thing.
Okay, and in a bigger city?
In a bigger city, I mean, I'd say like you could have like recycling, city beautification, building refurbishments, again, like all the physical infrastructure stuff. And then there's a human care aspect to this as well, in terms of like, do people in the community need childcare? There was a project in Argentina that lasted 6 to 10 years back in 2000 to deal with a big recession in that country. And it was kind of like, it wasn't a full-blown job guarantee, but it was sort of like a stingy version. And one thing that like a lot of people, and these were a lot of like rural communities that were impoverished. I mean, like some people would start like a local shop selling baked goods or sewing clothes. But then like some of the people hired for the shop would be providing childcare for all the other people who were working at the shop. And they too were like employed through the job guarantee.
So, I mean, wait, could you explain that about the bake shop? The people weren't part of the job guarantee, were opening the bake shop. They were just being, I guess the city was just providing resources to support it through the job guarantee.
Well, actually, my understanding from the Argentina work was that the bake shops were actually sometimes open. Like the proposal that I'm offering, and that what also happened in Argentina, didn't just provide the wages; it also provided a certain amount of upfront capital if you were trying to start something like that. So they would open bake shops or like sewing shops or toy making. I mean, there was this whole list of stuff. And the initial wages provided by the job guarantee helped them get off the ground. But then they also made a profit, like selling this stuff to the local community, and that they were able to then plow back into expanding.
Interesting. Okay, so give us a sense of like what the wages would be. What kind of benefits one would have?
Okay, so in terms of wages, what I recommended in the article was $25,000 a year, and the reason I picked that was frankly because it's what you get from $12 an hour, and that seemed to be the minimum wage that the Democrats in particular seem to be the center of gravity. I wrote this in December. The Democrats seem to be agreeing that $15 an hour would actually be better now, which I'm all for, and that would work out to a $31,000 a year wage paid by the job guarantee. I just say the idea of the job guarantee is not to compete with the private market for workers, so they wouldn't be hiking their salary more to pull workers away from the private markets. But what it does is it's basically a de facto minimum wage. If a private employer wanted to pay less than what the job guarantee was paying, then a worker could always be well, I'm just going to go take a job with the job guarantee program instead because they'll pay me more. So it is effectively an enforcement mechanism for a minimum wage. And this also applies to things like health benefits. What I recommended in the article was that you could just I got this from William Darity, who's a Duke economist who's worked on the job guarantee a lot. But his idea is just give the workers access to the same health benefits program that all other federal workers already enjoy. And so you get the same enforcement there. Any private employer who wanted to attract people away from job guarantee jobs would need to offer benefits at that level or better.
And so in that respect, it acts, that's almost its most, distinct characteristic that is most analogous to the public option, where it is really just adds a competitor. In this case, a competitor, to vying for your labor business, as it were, and drives up the wages. And it presumably, right, it would drive up the wages of everyone across the board.
Exactly. Yeah. No, this is really a proposal to make private employment better by as exactly as you said, forcing them to compete with a public option.
And has there been much work on what the implications would be? I mean, how far up through employment would people feel the impact? I mean, with how much upward pressure would it put on wages, through the system?
That is a good question, and I can't give you really detailed specifics, but I can say that equivalent studies have been done on the effect of upping the minimum wage law to $12 to $15 an hour, and the ripple effects extend relatively high up the ladder. I can't say how high for sure, but they definitely happen.
Now, I know that there must be some libertarians out there who are just expressing dismay that you would in some way put some businesses out of business, right? I mean, because theoretically, I'm no longer going to. I mean, it's the same problem, I guess, with the minimum wage, but you're putting elevator operators out of business, or some other businesses, I guess, theoretically.
Yes. I mean, I don't think there's any denying that, if we instituted the job guarantee, a lot of low-paid work would go away. For instance, the fast food industry probably wouldn't disappear, but it would probably shrink a lot, and, the burgers it sells would become more expensive. I'm like people who are concerned with like, eating greens versus eating more meat and all that kind of thing. I mean, you could debate whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that would definitely happen. And I think the thing to point out is that with the minimum wage, there is at least in theory the possibility that by mandating through law that you have to pay at least this wage, you simply make it impossible for the economy to provide enough work for everybody. I mean, I want to emphasize that like that's highly contested and the data is not clear on that at all. But
Right.
that is
I think
certainly the concern you get from the libertarian camp.
To be
so
fair,
the thing that I guess the point of
to be fair on that,
go
the
ahead.
data I think is the only thing that shows is that I think with some teenagers sectors that there may be some job loss, but the job loss, the net is a gain because you're putting more income into people's hands.
Right, exactly. I bring it up to say like that is the narrative you will get from the right, that's what's wrong with the minimum wage. And I think the main thing to say about the job guarantee is that the basic idea of the job guarantee is that it offers work for everybody. So like the idea of eliminating employment opportunities is sort of dealt with by definition.
Right, exactly. And what would happen? What would be the age in which would you start at 18? Would we create some type of underclass of teenage workers who are the only ones who you could hire for less than $15 or something, or interested in work for less than $15?
I think that's a very good question, and I have to admit that even with a 4,000-word article, I wasn't able to deal with all the particulars. I think like what you'd want to do is like, I mean, you definitely want to be careful about like you don't want like child labor kind of thing happening. So like maybe like an age 18 is where the full job guarantee comes into effect. But there are definitely the economists working on this have definitely been sort of spitballing ideas about like how like you could have an apprenticeship program component that like starts out for young people that eventually like can move them into the full blown job guarantee if they want to, and that sort of thing. I mean, the other thing is like you don't want to be we need to just be investing in education a whole lot more so that like poor communities have good education opportunities. So you're not like pulling people away from the chance to learn more, so that pulling young people away from the chance to learn more so they can work. So I think there's a lot of details to be worked out, but people are definitely thinking about that.
Right. I mean, that's a little bit nitpicky, but I imagine if we get to that point where that's the argument, the proposal's doing rather well. How does it work? I mean, so this functions as sort of like an economic stabilizer, right? I mean, it sort of has a similar dynamic to food stamps, and we should talk about what the implications are for something like food stamps to institute something like this. But food stamps, the threshold doesn't change in terms of your eligibility, but when we go through hard economic times, the number of people who are eligible increases. This has the same dynamic, right? It wouldn't be a program that you say, we're going to earmark X number of billions of dollars annually. It would be a program where we're going to provide for the demand for these jobs as opposed to base it on a specific number.
Exactly. Yeah. You basically say how many people want a job through the job guarantee program and then commit to spending whatever amount is needed to meet that demand. And yes, this would definitely be an economic stabilizer. I think it's very fair to argue that if once you have a job guarantee up and running, there's every reason to assume that recessions would be, I mean, they'd still probably happen, but they'd be less violent. They would be less deep. They would recover faster. And the reason for that being is that right now, when we have a recession, people get thrown out of work, and every person that gets thrown out of work is that much less consumption going on in the economy, which throws that many more people out of work. So it's like it's a self-reinforcing negative spiral that keeps going until the economy hits bottom and then begins to recover. And the idea of the job guarantee is that that when the private market discards workers, instead of them becoming jobless, they just go onto the job guarantee work. They still have an income floor. They still can spend in the economy and so in the private market and provide consumption for private market employers. So the private market economy should recover much faster.
Yeah, I should say it's an automatic stabilizer, and you
Automatic
also throw
stabilizer,
in
yeah.
the idea I should say mention too in terms of the jobs is one of my favorite ideas of postal service banking. But let's get to how much it costs because one of the things that I think we've talked about on this show is that if we ultimately and hopefully move to a single payer healthcare system, it's going to involve a significant hike in taxes that people should be aware of. Of course, there's benefits that come with that. You're not paying for your healthcare premiums, but what is the cost that you estimate for something like this? And then, where do we see the universal returns on something like this?
Right. So, I need to pull up my article. I believe my estimation of how much it would cost was around $670 billion.
It was exactly
$670
billion. Your estimate.
Well, my memory serves me well. And I should say, and the first thing to note is that is what the cost would be if we started it right now. And the first thing to note is that precisely because you are suddenly pumping more income into the economy, the private markets would recover, wages in the private market would go up, people would leave the job guarantee to go into the private market. So the cost of this program would immediately start falling. And it's difficult to say how far it would fall, but it would, if you look at the history of the Works Progress Administration, or the history of this program that was instituted in Argentina, I think it's fair to estimate that the cost of the program over the long term would stabilize at least around half of that initial $670 billion, maybe lower. And like $335 billion is less than a lot of the major entitlement programs we have now, their annual.
335
less than defense spending.
335 is close to basically a third of the cost of Social Security. I think Social Security is somewhere around $900 billion annually. And in this instance, not only would the actual, I guess, recipients or participants drop, right? Because theoretically you would get that much more economic activity with the more money, but you're also going to be saving money theoretically on the other automatic stabilizers that we have for people like food stamps, right? Because we'd be driving wages up, and you wouldn't have the concept of the working poor, really.
Exactly. The number of people who would be in need of food stamps, qualifying for food stamps, would go way down. All of the people on the job guarantee would have health benefits. They would not need to be on Medicaid. So all of the spending on these other programs that, like food stamps, Medicaid, and the other programs that provide a similar safety net, would fall naturally. We wouldn't even have to pass any laws cutting them. They would just, the number of people on them would just drop. And it's difficult to say how much that fall in spending would offset the spending on the job guarantee. I talked to several economists about this, got a lot of different answers. But the lowest estimate seems to be a fourth, and there were much more ambitious estimates as well. So,
and what happens to the people? Presumably, right, the people who do not opt into this program. I can imagine maybe there are single parents who who are living in poverty and they don't have the ability to provide for childcare for their kids, maybe $15 an hour in their specific region. And I should also add, you do introduce the idea that in certain regions and localities, you may raise the minimum wage based on the cost of living there. But for people who don't, or for people who are disabled, perhaps in some fashion can't work because of an illness or something, is there any concern about increased stigmatization on some level? Talk about the cultural implications of this, because you do raise this idea that there is a perception that people who are on public assistance in some way are shirkers. I would imagine on some level that might increase for folks who are not on it, but it might work the other way for people who do look to make use of this as a public benefit?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and I do try to like think through a few cultural implications a little bit in the piece. The first thing I think I want to say is just like there are a lot of people in the economy. There's a large portion of the people who are below the poverty line who like cannot participate in the labor market, even if they wanted to, that they're too old or they are disabled, or that they're in school. We'd like them to get an education. That's just a basic human need that we should be providing. So like, excuse me. We need a more generous social safety net to like plug these holes that the labor market simply cannot fulfill. Now, in terms of like whether we would stigmatize those people more under a job guarantee scenario, I certainly think you could imagine like a circumstance where you could have a job if you want to. The government's providing it to you. Why don't you take it? And these people are culturally shamed. I do wonder, however, like how much stigmatization of people on the safety net is a function of the fact that the labor market, even for people who are working in it, is often really unpleasant and low paid and unjust. And there is a sense of like the pie, because of that, there is a sense the pie is not big enough, that we all need to be fighting over our slice lest it go down. And anytime we see anybody else getting some help, we need to be, we need to be suspicious of that and hostile to that. And I hope, I should say, that if we pass a job guarantee, the experience of an economy that works for everybody and where everybody is made better off year after year would become much more universal. And that itself would affect cultural perception. Like maybe you have a situation where people say, well, the job guarantee is available for everybody. This person's still not working. Well, maybe it's because they're old or they're disabled or like they're in this social circumstance that really prevents them. And so my hope, I guess, is that this would actually in some ways help the politics of providing a more generous social safety net. Like, I don't know the future, and I am not like a trained sociologist, so this is spitballing, but I guess I would say that is my hope.
What makes this better than the UBI, which is the Universal Basic Income, where basically the government, the idea behind the UBI, I think as our audience is familiar with, is that the government would basically provide everybody with a stipend as a baseline, and so that people would have money. And how is it better? Does it complement it? What's its relationship to it?
So there's this thing that's developed where like fans of the job guarantee and fans of the UBI tend to view each other sometimes as rivals, which like I am not into that. I am not a fan. I like the UBI. I do think overall the job guarantee is like the project we should prioritize. And I would say that for a few different reasons. First off, just in terms of practical politics, the price tag for like a UBI that would really worth its salt would be enormous, like at least twice, probably maybe three times the tag of the job guarantee at its largest. I also think there's the question of social norms, just like the fact that we view work as important as like a kind of good for like the social fabric and for individuals in and of themselves. And I know that like some UBI advocates like actually want to break apart the idea of receiving income for work, and I am not unsympathetic to that cause. But I think it's like there's a practical political aspect that needs to be dealt with. The other thing I think I would say is that even if you institute a UBI, I think it would have several good effects on the labor market in that it gives workers an exit, so they also get more bargaining power for over wages and benefits and that sort of thing. The same bargaining power the job guarantee would give workers, they would also get with the UBI somewhat. So I think it would definitely help. But one thing that I think is worth pointing out is that like even with the UBI, you still have to deal with the tax system, and particularly the Federal Reserve and its tendency to like get freaked out about inflation, jack up interest rates, and hold down economic growth. So you could the one thing that I think is particularly great about the job guarantee is it really works towards making labor markets permanently tight. Like, that is just intrinsic to what it does. And the UBI could do that, but how taxes and how interest rates would interact with the UBI would have serious consequences. So I think the job guarantee, in terms of like the goal of permanently tightening labor markets, is more self-contained.
Yeah, I mean, expand on that, the relationship between the Fed and the labor markets. And I mean, I think you're touching on that as you talk about why a job guarantee is a little more effective in sort of insulating workers from the Fed's confusion about their mandate. I mean, I guess I'm editorializing there, but talk about that. Like, what normally happens when, because in this instance of the job guarantee, right? I guess the full employment, which we perceive as full employment, would drop substantially to 2% unemployment or something like that. I'm just throwing that out there, and the fact that there's a guarantee of employment sort of insulates workers from the Fed freaking out about that.
Right. So to just kind of lay the groundwork of what the Federal Reserve does, right? Like, if they're worried about inflation taking off, they raise interest rates to cool off inflation. If they're worried that there's like the economy isn't generating enough jobs, they lower interest rates to encourage job growth. One thing I think to keep in mind here is that when you raise interest rates, the way that fights inflation as a practical matter is it throws people out of work. It forces businesses to either contract or not expand as much as they would otherwise. So people who are unemployed and would like to work cannot find work. I mean, and these are usually, I should also add, the most underprivileged people in the workforce, people who are disabled, who are not white, who are, have already suffered long spells of unemployment, who have been incarcerated in the past. These are all the people hit hardest by that particular methodology of controlling inflation. And like that, I mean, and that is the practical mechanism. Is the idea behind Fed policy is inflation is set off by an arms race between private employers when there's no new people to pull into the labor market. They just have to pull workers from each other, and that requires like perpetual wage hikes that then spiral into inflation growth. And so the idea of a job guarantee is that like if that arms race between employers gets out of hand, it can cool it off. But it doesn't cool it off by throwing people into unemployment. It cools them off by just putting them on the job guarantee, and then they can move back into the private market as soon as like the wage price spiral cools off and inflation is no longer a big deal. So the most ambitious economists promoting the job guarantee actually suggest that we could fundamentally change the Federal Reserve's mandate to like control inflation or promote employment by jacking interest rates up and down. Other economists who are also sympathetic to the job guarantee are a lot more skeptical of that and think maybe the Fed would like still basically be the same as it is now. But that is definitely an aspect of this to keep in mind.
All right. Lastly, are there any politicians who have adopted this? I mean, are there any national politician, anybody in Congress, anybody in the Senate? Is there any receptivity to it?
I do not know of any national politicians who have advocated for this. I do know there are representatives, particularly in the House, John Conyers comes to mind, who have been fans of full employment for a long time. And I think this would be the kind of policy that they would be interested in. I mean, the Congressional Black Caucus has been very big on full employment for a long time. That is a goal that, like, the progressive left of the House has always been thinking about. And I don't know how far the job guarantee idea itself has percolated in those circles, but I think it clearly fits in with that like overall philosophy.
In the event that modern monetary theory does not catch up to the popularity of this proposal, has anybody like sort of mapped out what the funding, where funding would come from? Would it be a payroll tax? Where would it come from?
That is a good question. And I cannot give you an answer right off the top of my head. I do not know of anyone who has mapped out payments. One of the, like you said, like big fans of the job guarantee are the modern monetary theory people. And they really emphasize that, like, we have vastly more room to deficit spend than we think we do. And they basically say, like, precisely because the upper limits on our deficit spending is the risk of inflation, and because the job guarantee, like, theoretically could control inflation largely itself, they basically say, the job guarantee should be all or mostly deficit financed. And again, I want to say that, like, that is an ambitious proposal that even a lot of left-wing economists who favor the job guarantee would not be on board with. In terms of, like, funding mechanisms, to be honest, I haven't really seen that many proposals for that. Like, my personal bias would be, like, fund it with income tax hikes on the well-off. But
financial transaction tax would be nice too.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, Jeff, it's really it's a fascinating idea, and I'm glad to see it getting. I'm glad to see somebody writing it up, and hopefully we'll hear more of it. Jeff Spross, the piece is "You're Hired." We will link to it at majority.fm.
Okay. Thanks very much for having me on.
Thank you. Bye-bye. I like it. I'm down with that. Big time. Big time.
You're big time down with that.
I'm big time down with that. Legit, as Milo is now saying.
Can you just explain modern monetary theory? What's the...
Well, I'm actually thinking we need to have Stephanie Kelton on. And somebody's been asking me, a couple of people on Twitter, and we haven't had her on in a while. The idea is that our perception of the potential dangers of spending, of deficit financing things, are stuck in an era when our money supply was tied to a tangible resource, i.e. gold. So now that because we are a sovereign nation, because we have control of our own money supply, and also because of, I think the strength of the dollar, that we cannot have inflation as a function of monetary policy, as opposed to inflation that could come from a shortage of whatever, as a function of supply, of increased demand versus supply. The idea is that you used to be, if you put too much money in the economy, it's going to get overheated, and it could run away, as opposed to, in the event that it got overheated, you just take the money out of circulation. But you know what? We should have Stephanie Kelton come back on. Maybe she could. This would be a good sort of peg for her to explain how. But it's largely, not exclusively, but the biggest proponents of monetary theory seem to come out of, I think it's the University of Kansas. Like Bill Black is out of there, but also Walter Moser, I think it is. But we'll have her back on. All right, folks. Going to take a quick break, head into the fun half. A reminder, this program exists more and more between the YouTube stuff and the this and the that as a function of your membership. If you have the financial means to become a member, please do so at jointhemajorityreport.com. If you don't, but you still want the bonus material that we give our members, send me an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com and we will work out a deal with you. We're about to have like our first extra bonus special surprise soon. And that is Film Guy Matthew is going to come in next Friday. And he's going to screen for us the documentary he made. at the he didn't want to just send a link. He wanted to screen it in front of us.
I'm stuck
I
at
don't
a
know.
Polish bridge somewhere.
It's possible we may have to give him an award or something. I think it's part of it is he just wants to be here and feel the love of his.
Should bust out a red
tour.
carpet for him.
Maybe we
like
could
it.
do a whole thing. Like there's a red carpet. We take some paparazzi shots.
Yeah. Give him a goblet.
Well, you know what he's going to do with the goblet, right?
Sell it on eBay.
Sell it on eBay.
That's what I'm I'm looking
Ask us
out
to
for
sign
him.
it and sell it on eBay.
Is Mary coming?
I don't know. I have not dug into the details.
I
of
bet
this.
she is. It's
Come
like
on,
might
a big
be. I
moment.
mean,
Sam, get on it, man.
They're probably both
is
going
a
to be
premiere.
dressed to
You
the
got a plan.
nines, and
Yeah, now I know.
they'll come in.
We should all be in tuxes.
Also, folks, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Also, if you buy crap through Amazon or jet.com, head over to Majority Report, kickback.com, buy it through our links. We get a kickback. Not supposed to say what you do with those links in terms of putting them somewhere on your browser or anything like that, so I won't. Not going to say it. I don't need to.
But if you figure out a way to make them easily accessible.
There's plenty of ways. People do it all the time.
When people do things, they know things. Maybe they do them, maybe they don't. I don't fucking know. It's your fucking computer.
646-257-3920 is the number. You can IM us. We'll be right back after this. Seder here. This is the live broadcast of the Majority Report. And as you probably have heard, there's a bit of a YouTube apocalypse that has been going on. Many news and politics channels have lost their advertising because of an algorithm that Google has implemented as a function of ads showing up on hate-filled channels. Well, we got caught up in that, and it doesn't look like it's going to be resolved. So we need your help. You've probably heard from other channels that they're asking people to donate to a Patreon site. We are asking the same so that we can operate this YouTube feed without a cost to us. I mean, we don't look at YouTube as a huge revenue maker for us, but we need your help so that we're not losing money on it. So head over to our Patreon site. Here is the URL. We need your help. Just a couple of bucks, $2-3 a month would really help us out. Thanks so much and enjoy the show. Hi, folks.
I know he is afraid of me. Afraid he might say yes to me. He is like the dog. He says no, 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 no. And though he loves to fall, he says no, 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 no. He says no, 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 no. He says no, 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 no.
We are back. Sam Seder, the fun half. What was that? Is that too disturbing for people?
What?
Who
Who is
said,
disturbing?
who said Jesus Christ?
I said Jesus Christ. It had nothing to do with what you guys were talking about.
Mike was just praying.
Yeah, I was just praying. I actually do a
Let me-
prayer
let me-
before we go into the fun half so that the show goes well and that everybody does well.
As
in the
you
field,
know-
the
Somebody
impressions
asked me if
hit.
I wanted to do, oh gosh, I don't know the name of it,
Jesus
but
Christ.
the periodic Muslim prayers that they do.
Oh, that's a great idea. I would like to randomly drop a Muslim call to prayer
Well,
in,
can
just
I
so
say
people
something
can
about
be
the prayer
reminded
thing?
of who we are.
I mean, I've been sort of like fixated on this Jimmy Kimmel thing.
You're
for a
trying to
couple
ask us to change the prayer schedule in the morning?
No,
Okay.
it's fine. This prayer schedule is fine.
Okay.
There are two things. One, yesterday, I walk down to work with my neighbor sometimes. He doesn't work here, but I get
just
nervous
follows you.
and I ask him to walk.
Would you
me down.
walk with me? Make
Excuse
sure I
me.
don't
I know this
spill
is
my
very-
iced coffee all over me when I'm listening to my podcast. and
No,
my
I
glasses
don't. I
fall
don't.
off.
I get the iced coffee when I'm closer here, and I've mentioned this before. I go in, and they have like Kelly Ripa on, right? All the time. Kelly.
I like Kelly Ripa.
And someone just told me that the MMT people, University of Missouri, Kansas City. So I got to get
Yeah.
So Kelly Ripa's on, and the other day she mentioned the Jimmy Kimmel thing. Yesterday, I guess it was, and she said prayers do work. And then I watched the Jimmy Kimmel thing, and everything he said was about all of the science and the professionals and insurance. That show, the Kelly Ripa thing, is like literally you're moving into a different dimension, and
Why
it
do you hate
is.
Kelly Ripa so much?
Yeah, but yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Ryan Seacrest officially became the co-host. So things are about to get real.
He was
because
back
he's
again today.
deep.
I had
he's
no
the
idea.
co-host.
No
He's
idea
very
who he was.
science-oriented.
Did
Yes,
not recognize
he's
that guy.
very well educated,
But
and
I am still bothered by Jimmy Kimmel's. We all agree.
F
shtick.
you, Jimmy
Because
Kimmel.
and I was talking to Nikki about it last night, and then I realized I was actually a little bit even more upset about it than I was yesterday, because there's this sense of it completely divorces people from the sense of the implications of politics. He characterized politics as it's just like a football game and they go back and forth in squabbles, but the meaningful things are somehow outside of that. And the reality is absolutely 100% the opposite.
That's right.
The reason why there's no pre-existing conditions as an exclusion of getting insurance is specifically political. In fact, with almost the primary argument that has taken place in politics over the past 7 years. I mean, if politics means anything this day and age, it has to do with health insurance reform over the course of those 7 or 8 years.
I just pray that people can start to understand that.
But to take it outside of politics. Now, I understand. I think there is a net positive in his raising it, but I also think that it reinforces something that is very dangerous, which is that we are powerless. The political system has nothing to do with things that impact our daily lives.
And let's also take it one step further. I think the test, because there were two ways of reading Obama when he talked like that. One was that he was genuinely deluded enough to think that there was somebody on the other side that was willing to negotiate. But the other theory was that maybe what you do when you have a platform and you say truisms and obvious moral statements like a child shouldn't die because it is a heart defect because their parents aren't wealthy, you start to marginalize opposition to that through. But we've tested that, and not really. You know what I mean? Because the other side is willing to lie and obfuscate so much that that proposition hasn't really worked well. But I think that there was a time where what Jimmy Kimmel did, you could make the defense that all he was doing was
reestablishing what our values
what should be a truism that just isn't.
Exactly. And
well, I took it as a plea to viewers, not to lawmakers, to all of his viewers who are much more aware of what's going on with healthcare right now, and just can't we all agree on this? And anyone who's a Republican realizing that their lawmakers do not agree with that.
But that's sort of what Michael's saying there, is make it a value. But he's saying it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or you're Republican. He didn't say can't we. He says we all agree. Don't we all agree? I mean, we all agree. So he's literally saying it doesn't matter. The implications of this don't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. But you know what? Actually, they absolutely do. This stuff is not happening on planet Zoran or wherever it is, and it's flown down here. No, the reasons why we have protections from pre-existing conditions is explicitly and exclusively because Democrats pushed it and got it. And the reason why there's even a question as to whether or not that could go forward is explicitly and exclusively because Republicans have tried to vote against it 50 some odd times. And even now, all they want to do is throw a couple extra $1 billion a year into these high risk pools. And so I get the idea that he is promoting what should be our values by sort of implying it would be ridiculous to even contemplate that it's not our values. But the fact is that that's a delusion, and it's a dangerous one because basically people say, Jimmy's right, man. Politics don't do anything.
Well,
it would sort of be like...
Do you think that the town halls are exemplary of
I think the number of people who watch Jimmy Kimmel's thing versus the town halls is like literally like the operation of what happens at CNN News versus here.
Right.
The number of people who will see Jimmy Kimmel's thing, I would put in the tens upon tens of millions. And the number of people who watch town halls, I would put in maybe a couple million.
Right.
Maybe a couple million.
And so that's why, Jimmy Kimmel, what Jimmy Kimmel says, has that much more relevance. But
it's also a problem just to say, like, even when we talk about like international human rights, international law, and it's like, that's something that comes up all the time. Like, I mean, take a really extreme example. Saudi Arabia is like, we don't all agree with abolishing the death penalty, like let alone abolishing the death penalty. We still want to behead people in public squares. Like there aren't shared frameworks, and we need to be real about that.
Well, and also I just hate the idea that people get sort of like that there's a promotion depoliticizing it. But all right, so here is Matt Lewis is a nice guy, I think.
He is a very nice guy.
But boy, oh boy, talk about going and sweeping in the swimming in the deep end when you have yet to learn how to swim. I mean, that's every parent's greatest fear, that your child will be in the deep end of the pool and you haven't taught them to swim yet.
He's been taking swimming lessons for a while, though.
He is. And what's been fascinating about this is that, Jimmy Kimmel's statement has been talked about, and to a person, every Republican, even though I'm sitting here saying that Jimmy Kimmel depoliticized it too much, every Republican has immediately gotten totally defensive, because the only people who, maybe not the only people, but broadly speaking, the only people who hear Jimmy Kimmel and feel like it's an accusation are the very people
who don't want
babies to have, to grow up without pre-existing conditions. So the defensiveness, remember,
doth protest
I've just
too
criticized
much, baby killers.
I have just criticized Jimmy Kimmel for not making it political. And every Republican out there projects upon it as being political because they feel ashamed about their position only when it's called out and
How
it's really
dare
described.
you, Jimmy?
But here's the exchange on CNN.
Appeal to sort of make a boring policy point like that really
I
hit
thought
home.
It was a little cheap, though. Look, as a father, I can identify. I can understand. I can try to understand.
I thought it was a little cheap. Talk about, he who denies it supplies it. Just go back. The first guy talking, I don't know who it is, but he's just saying about Ryan Lissa. He's just saying like, it really was an emotional thing. And then Matt Lewis comes in with, I thought it was a little cheap. Really? Whoa. All right.
Like that, with an emotional, personal appeal to sort of make a boring policy point like that really
I
hit
thought
home.
It was a little cheap, though. Look, as a father, I can identify. I can understand. I can try to understand. What is it? President Obama, I think, said that being a dad or having a child is like having your heart living outside your body. I completely understand where Jimmy Kimmel's coming from. The passion, I think, is sincere. I don't think that this is the right move for him to do, to politicize this. This is a guy who's incredibly rich, of course, and he's not going to have a problem. And the truth is,
he's politicizing. He's making a moral point that people should be allowed to get insurance.
And that's exactly why I tune into Jimmy Kimmel to get him making moral points. Look, people do get coverage. If
Pause it. Hold on. So I guess the problem is he's mad because Jimmy Kimmel shared this story that his son almost died. And that's not what I tune in for.
Because you're the honest. What the fuck are you talking about? It's boring. You're boring. It's boring.
Turn the channel.
Turn the
channel.
I used to think you sold out enough when you didn't do the swimsuit contest with Corolla.
Right.
And now this. Now you're talking about your freaking heart defect son. What's your problem? You're supposed to be a comedian, man.
To be fair to Matt Lewis, we'll keep playing the clip, but to be fair to Matt Lewis, I do remember when he was very vocal about complaining when Jimmy Kimmel talked about parties he went to or when he broke up with Sarah Silverman years ago. I do remember that.
It was funny, man. What the hell?
All right.
Emergency room, they take care of you. That was actually part of the reason that Mitt Romney came up with Romney Care.
One of the number one reasons people go bankrupt is from health care costs.
And I would also...
So it's not, that is just not true that
but
you
I would
can just
also
go in
say
there
that it's
and
not
just
true.
get care.
Isn't even one of the controversial points
the notion that Republicans are getting rid of pre-existing conditions is actually not factually either. You said that a couple times
The
today.
Meadows-MacArthur amendment, they are gutting the guarantee.
No,
Absolutely.
states can apply for a waiver. If they are granted the waiver, they are then required to set up a high-risk pool. Now, it may well be...
Pause it. Let me explain that to you. He's saying, no, they're not gutting the federal requirement because we are putting up a situation where the states could actually opt out of the federal requirement, which definitionally, for folks who are playing at home, means that it's not a requirement. If you can opt out and replace it with a crappy risk pool which prices people out of health insurance, it's not a mandate requirement.
Yeah, it's like whether or not black people are people, you leave it to the states. What the point is, I'm trying to watch Kimmel do a fucking joke, man. He ruined it.
Good.
If they are granted the waiver, they are then required to set up a high-risk pool. Now, it may well be that prices people out.
Boop.
The congressional
Pause it. Wait a second. That may well be. That is quite a button to put on that. Now, maybe it will be that prices people out. In other words, I've just outlined the path in which you could get not have health insurance, which, you know what? Pre-existing conditions, really, that's what we had before 2014. You may well be priced out of getting health insurance. I mean, does anybody doubt that you could find a health insurance company, regardless of what your pre-existing conditions, for the right price, wouldn't cover you? I mean, I would go into the private health insurance business if
the right price will totally let your kid die.
No
problem.
My point being, like, you come to me and you tell me you've had 2 heart attacks. All right, I will give you health insurance. It's going to be $6 million annually.
Dude, you got to do the Dr. Evil figure for that one.
It'll be
yeah, there you go.
$6 million.
He's like the only people that watch. I think it's an underrated movie, The Rainmaker. You know that movie?
No.
With Matt Damon.
Let's continue.
Oh, you swine.
If you pass this bill, 24 million Americans will not have health insurance 10 years from now. I mean, that's just
the Congressional Budget Office is wrong a lot.
Can they still go to the? Yeah, but everybody agrees, even if we're off 5 or 10% or 15%,
Show me
they still
that.
won't
Show
have a
me
lot
a
of
single-
Americans.
My only point is
the
notion that Republicans
people are going to be protected. It's not true that they're going to be equally protected under this changed system.
And also the notion that you can go to the emergency room. Yeah, I mean, you can get some basic care in the emergency room, but it's not.
You're not going to get chemotherapy.
You're not. It's not.
Do you think that Jimmy Kimmel's baby would have died if he weren't rich? And if Republicans passed their health care, that's the implication.
That's what makes this so
That's the implication.
That's what makes this so unselfish. He's not talking about his own child. He's saying, I had this experience. My kid wouldn't have survived.
Do you believe that?
If he didn't have the funds that he had because of the
Do you believe that his kid would not survive?
It's very possible. Look, there was a little kid in
Republicans
Baltimore. There was a little kid in Baltimore who died because she had an infection in her tooth and she couldn't go and get it treated, and she ended up dying. Look it up. I mean, it's not.
Do you think it's a made-up thing that people with pre-existing conditions previous to Obamacare couldn't got insurance and everything was fine? That the whole issue of pre-existing conditions is just a manufactured issue?
No, look, I think it's legitimate. Donald Trump says that he wanted to keep.
It's legitimate. It was one of the most basic cruelties of the medical system before they fixed it.
Do you think people deserve to have housing? Should everybody have a house? Maybe government should provide that.
The same thing.
Should everybody have a job?
Well, Actually, now that it seems that Matt Lewis has conceded that everyone should have health care, I'm glad to see he's moving on to housing because I think there's a very good argument that we should be doing that. Now, I think, our guest today had the suggestion of of basically a guaranteed job. I think that's also good. It is good to see that Matt Lewis is so quickly moving through an understanding of what government should provide.
But that's what's funny about Matt Lewis is that he almost is like, wait a second, a baby with a tooth died? That's terrible. I'm going to need to double check that. But I kind of don't really know what I'm talking about. And I might need to.
No, but what's interesting is we're also seeing exactly why the Republicans cannot repeal and replace Obamacare. And as critical as I have been of Obamacare, and I've always liked the PP part of the PPACA, which is the patient protection. Well, that's the actual name of the bill.
I understand.
But the point being, I said PP. No, the point being that in just 5 or 6 very long years, we have seen this debate change fundamentally, where you would have 4 people on a panel, including David Gergen and some other establishment, center-left people, basically looking at someone who is suggesting that we don't have some type of, just conceptually, never mind in practice, but conceptually, the idea of universal health care.
Oh, Gergen's
they're
center
looking
right.
yes, but I'm talking about like Lizzo. They're looking at this guy like he is from planet Mars. And that is an accomplishment that I think we shouldn't underestimate.
And you know who said this was Charles Krauthammer, of all people. He said the day after the ACA repeal, the first one was pulled, he said, Obama's won, and the only thing that's going to happen with healthcare is it's going to be expanded. Because the expectation set has been shifted. It's morally unacceptable now.
Here is an email that we got from a guy. I won't give his name because he didn't specifically said I could. He didn't tell me what, but he said, I know a little bit about the subject that Kimmel's son was born with a tetralogy of Fallot. I know a little bit about the subject because our son, who is now 30, was born with a very serious congenital heart disease that required multiple major surgeries when he was a baby and a toddler. At the time, our workplace insurance plan had a ceiling of $1 million. We burned through more than halfway through that cap in 4 years, and we were sweating the future. Thankfully, his expenses slowed down. It was a huge relief for all of us that as he aged out of his parents' workplace coverage, that the ACA was miraculously born. We now help subsidize our son's $500 a month platinum plan. Needless to say, the GOP's attack on the ACA and health insurance in general is a major concern in our family, as his coverage could disappear at any time because of the machinations of GOP monsters. The idea that, for a couple that did not have workplace insurance or who had a lower than $1 million lifetime cap, $500,000 expense would basically follow this family throughout this kid's life. And it's, wow, I hate to have to make my living arguing the opposite. That seems to be rather difficult. So I do have
Can I
some.
also just add, I did send you that I am, so we should loop back
Matt
to that.
Lewis said, in the last 24 hours, people have called me trash and scum. But I think Jimmy Kimmel was I still think Jimmy Kimmel was wrong.
Latest deep dive for the Daily Beast. Can I also just say, it's obvious why when we talk about this type of issue, we're talking about the most vulnerable, which are, babies, obviously. But it's it's pretty morally repugnant to me that someone in their 50s, can't get health care too. It doesn't even need to be the most intense, morally persuasive argument. It's everybody. It's a basic thing. I mean, there's even in that frame, there's still some type of moral system to who gets basic survival. And I think that's what needs to be fundamentally taken down. I love the name of Brunig's new project when he calls it Entitlement Nation.
Yeah.
I love that. Reframe that.
What's that buzz?
Okay. even with the
Sometimes when you mess with that stuff, Michael.
Well, Mike can't talk anymore today.
What was the
Goodbye,
messing
Michael.
with?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know what the mess was.
All right. So we're in the midst. I think ongoing right now is what is happening with the Republican Party and their attempts to appeal the Affordable Care Act. The goalposts have moved significantly for them. For 7 years, it was repeal the Affordable Care Act. Upon their election, it was repeal the Affordable Care Act. Then it moved to let's get this baby through the Senate after we get it through the House. Then it was let's get this baby through the House. Now it's like, can we share the blame for why it's not getting through the House so that none of our conservative friends vote me out of the speaker's position? But the moderates are afraid, the so-called moderates are afraid to take the heat from this because they don't want to get blamed for it. And really, now the goal seems to be, how can we satiate Donald Trump's to-do list so that his support doesn't fall below 40 or 35% in terms of approval, but at the same time, don't destroy the future of the Republican control of the House. I would suggest unlikely they're going to be able to thread that needle. You cannot get. I don't even think you can take a vote in the House at this point for this bill without it seriously hurting them in the 2018 election, regardless of whether or not
hurt them seriously in the 2018
it's already,
election.
But I'm
man.
saying they're going to have to vote on this bill, and there was an amendment offered that adds $8 billion to the risk pools. We have gone through these numbers many times. If you add $8 billion over 5 years, in other words, another $1.5 billion. That's rough math. $1.3 billion to the risk pools. You will still be literally $10 or $12 billion annually, maybe up to $15 billion annually short, based upon our experience with the 34 risk pools that existed before 2008 in each state. Here is Chris Cuomo basically laying it out on Paul Ryan, which I love to see Paul Ryan finally being held to account.
Because the MacArthur Amendment does exactly that. I don't know if people have taken the time to read it, but you should. Paul Ryan put out a tweet saying that the MacArthur Amendment ensures that people with pre-existing conditions will get covered. That is a lie, okay? He has to know that it doesn't do that. He has to be intentionally deceiving people when he says that it would do that, because by definition, what this amendment does is give the state an ability to opt out and create their own pools, which are a morass of problems for people at the high end of risk.
Wow. I have definitely not heard Chris Cuomo going like that.
You see stuff like that and you just wonder, what
you
is
see
going
stuff
on?
like that and you wonder, is Andy Kindler's Twitter feed getting incredibly effective at shaping CNN editorial policy?
Well, good for, I'll tell you something. If I end up voting for a Cuomo now for president, I'm
definitely the better brother.
Throw Chris into that mix. But that's exactly right. I mean, that's impressive. Here is Mick Mulvaney, who is, as you know, the director of the budget.
Less likable than Donald Trump.
One of the singularly most unlikable people I think I've ever come across being put in a position to sell anything. And also has a unique sense as a politician, or I should say a unique lack of sense as a politician of how he comes off to people. It's bad enough for him that he has to spin a budget that looks nothing like the budget they proposed initially. I mean, he has done a complete 180 on this stuff. And I guess here he is attempting to spend that budget, but apparently whatever powers that exist in the world decided, you know what, let's make it even a little more challenging. Here he is on a conference call with reporters, and then something happens.
The president on Twitter called for a government shutdown in September to try to fix this mess. Can you please address those comments? Do you think a shutdown will be necessary later this year to get the budget system fixed?
Well, again, right now I'm not worried about September. I'm worried about this deal that's in front of us. But I think the president's tweet was that we might need a shutdown at some point to drive home that this place, that Washington needs to be fixed. I think that's a defensible position, one we'll deal with in September. The truth of the matter, though, is now is we've averted the government shutdown in a way that that allows the president to fund his priorities. By the way, for those of you who have put us back on hold, if you could mute your phones, that would be really great. I enjoy the classical music. I do. All right. Hold on a second. Is there a way to... Oh. All right. Let's try this. Who would like to ask a question? This is going to be a disaster.
Doug Obey with Inside EPA. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned that the Democrats didn't get renewable energy subsidies. Which subsidies are we talking about here?
They had asked for new subsidies, I think, on renewables, and we...
You're breaking up. Hello?
Got another question here from the AP.
There you go. There's another minute of it. Come on, man.
Is anyone still there?
Yeah, the audio's breaking up.
Real stellar control of the White House.
Keep phones muted. Is there anybody left there? The person just spoke. This is unbelievable!
That's mad
There needs to be a better system than this. This does not work very well.
Is the music changing?
Oh, that's it. All right. Wow. That's pretty crazy. Will you play the Benny Hill music now? That is so awesome. I hope.
Where was the whole music coming from?
Well, what happens is reporters call into these conference calls, and sometimes they forget to put their own phone on mute because they're
Right.
going to ask a question. But if they had to click off and they're on a business, they're at a, some type of like business thing, they may put that call on hold without forgetting to put on their mute button or press mute in the call system. So their hold music actually plays.
Right.
That was awesome. I really hope somebody did that on purpose. I mean, I guess if I was a reporter, I'd be a little bit annoyed, but maybe not.
It's not like you're getting anything useful anyway.
I mean, it would be interesting to sort of, here's the thing. If there's somebody out there who's doing that on purpose, they really have to be committed to doing it on purpose all the time. So that the reporters just basically say, well, I can blow off that call. And everybody else is going to blow off that call. So there's no competition. I don't have to feel bad about it.
I like, though, he's just like, don't worry. We're still absolutely committed to making people starve. We're
Right.
gonna
Oh, yeah.
We're
They're
going to
not gonna-
re-upping on defunding medical research.
The actual content was funny because he's like, yeah, they didn't get some green energy subsidies that they wanted.
He's like, yeah, well, you know what? There's still going to be more pollution particles in the air because of the work that we did. So maybe they shouldn't be so happy about that.
All right. This morning, James Comey testified in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Put Michael's thing down just for the time being. Testified in front of the Senate, the Senate Intelligence Committee. And James Comey is still defending his rationale for sending the letter to Congress. I actually think the subsequent exchange with Sheldon Whitehouse was also pretty good. But, here it is. This keeps playing out. I think the Democrats believe that it is effective in maintaining the fervor of the resistance. And we also have the clip of Hillary Clinton saying something similar. Look, I think it is a real problem for Democrats to mutually to exclusively rely on this. But the reality is that with the broad, uninformed public who is not going to get as jazzed about the idea of, expansion of Social Security or the universality of a free college, that this type of stuff has its place. Donald Trump is at a very low approval rating. The Democrats just absolutely, totally rolled the Republicans in terms of the budget. Now, it's only till September, but it's big time. We'll talk about it in a bit. But nevertheless, here's Dianne Feinstein pursuing this line of questioning. And of course, Comey's answer is completely insufficient. I mean, this is why you have policies.
Here's how I thought about it. I'm not trying to talk you into this, but I want you to know my thinking. Having repeatedly told this Congress, we are done and there's nothing there, there's no case there, there's no case there, to restart in a hugely significant way, potentially finding the emails that would reflect on her intent from the beginning,
potentially,
and not speak about it would require an act of concealment, in my view. And so I stared at speak and conceal. Speak would be really bad. There's an election in 11 days. Lordy, that would be really bad. Concealing, in my view, would be catastrophic. Not just to the FBI, but well beyond.
Pause
and
it.
honestly,
Look, remember the context here. I mean, this is like an incredibly disingenuous statement. The idea that if you set it up, I mean, I can understand from his perspective rhetorically why he wants to set it up as to speak or conceal. But you know what? There's nothing being concealed here. They didn't know anything. And James Comey concealed from Congress what's going on with his investigations with Trump associates for months after he was inaugurated. They concealed it. I mean, remember, the first time he went in front of the Intelligence Committee was, 3 or 4 weeks ago? He's a liar. So this is incredibly disingenuous. I think, of course, we saw that New York Times piece that suggested he just thought that she was going to win and wanted to maintain its credibility. It's a little bit harder for him to say that because what was the credibility being maintained for? I believe it was to ultimately bring some type of indictments against Trump or Trump's associates. But here, let's let him continue to be stupid and sort of lie.
as between really bad and catastrophic, I said to my team, we've got to walk into the world of really bad. I've got to tell Congress that we're restarting this, not in some frivolous way, in a hugely significant way. And the team also told me we cannot finish this work before the election.
Hugely significant? You had 5 or 6 or 10 people looking at 6,000 emails over the course of a week or two that had no evidentiary, and maybe you didn't know this at the time, but you didn't know it, right? It's that's also saying for all as we know, there could be stuff all over the place that if we started to look for, we would find, but they did not know that this stuff had any relevance beyond the fact that it existed.
And then they worked night after night after night, and they found thousands of new emails. They found classified information on Anthony Weiner. Somehow, her emails are being forwarded to Anthony Weiner, including classified information by her assistant, Huma Abedin. And so they found thousands of new emails and then called me the Saturday night before the election and said, thanks to the wizardry of our technology, we've only had to personally read 6,000. We think we can finish tomorrow morning, Sunday. And so I met with them. And they said, we found a lot of new stuff. We did not find anything that changes our view of her intent. So we're in the same place we were in July. It hasn't changed our view. And I asked them lots of questions. And I said, okay, if that's where you are, then I also have to tell Congress that we're done. Look, this was terrible. It makes me mildly nauseous to think that we might have had some impact on the election.
Pause it. Mildly nauseous. You know, in a society where public servants take themselves seriously, if you think that you did something that impacted the outcome of arguably the most important election in the country, you know what you would do? Resign. Not just
That's a
get
little harsh.
mildly I have a mild upset stomach.
That's a little harsh.
I have a mild
It's a little
upset
harsh.
upset stomach. I may have to take a Zyrtec or
No,
whatever.
I would like to say, Senator, that if we nuke North Korea, I might have a full-fledged boo-boo. Like, I feel really bad.
Continue.
But honestly, it wouldn't change the decision. Everybody who disagrees with me has to come back to October 28th with me and stare at this and tell me what you would do.
Pause
Would
it.
you
I'll tell you what I would do. I would say, boy, what's policy say on this? What does the stated policy say on
Follow
this?
FBI procedure.
What does the FBI and Department of Justice policy explicitly say about this situation? Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to defer to policy.
speak or would you conceal? And I could be wrong, but we honestly made a decision between those two choices that even in hindsight, and this has been one of the world's most painful experiences, I would make the same decision. I would not conceal that on October 28th from the Congress. And I sent a letter to Congress. By the way, people forget this. I didn't make a public announcement. I sent a private letter to the chairs and the rankings of the oversight committees. I know it's a distinction without a difference in the world of leaks, but it was very important that I tell them instead of concealing. And reasonable people can disagree, but that's the reason I made that choice. And it was a hard choice. I still believe in retrospect the right choice, as painful as this has been. And I'm sorry for the long answer.
You know, I would have loved the next question, like, who released that information? We know who it was. It was Jason Chaffetz, wasn't it? Or was it?
That's
it?
my
No.
understanding.
Well, he's not in the Intel committee, is he?
I thought wasn't also oversight that he sent it to. I thought he said it. He said to all the relevant committees. If it was not him, then it might have been. Oh, who's on intelligence? Our old friend
Nunez.
Nunez, the midnight lurker.
Who's James
But-
Comey
but
been
nevertheless-
taking sad face classes from?
Mike Pence.
Yeah.
Mike Pence. I am so almost mildly nauseous at this. I am almost mildly nauseous. All right, let's go to.
This, ad that Mike Pence ran against the guy, one of his first opponents, where he had someone dress up as a sheikh, and it was this very racist ad. And the guy said, "You know," he goes, "Yeah." And then I met Pence in person. And it's the same, like, "Oh, it's so good to finally meet you." Like that's Mike Pence. He'll
Right.
do like the original racist sheikh ad, but he'll still give you the squint.
Calling from a 515 area code. Who's this? Got to turn down his mic. It's driving me crazy. 515 area code. Who's this?
Hello?
Hello?
This is Sanjeeva from Ames, Iowa.
Hi, Sanjeeva. How are you?
Good. I was busy interfering in the British election.
You were busy interfering in the British election?
Yeah, well, I was teaching people how to text bank and, phone bank using some of the technology from Our Revolution. We were on Skype teaching Momentum people from the labor movement to how to do that. Actually, I learned that Theresa May is worse than Hillary Clinton in campaigning. Corbyn might have a chance because she hates seeing people. She had to bust like Tory activists to like 20 town halls because she just can't do like town halls in front of real people apparently.
Well,
also the polls moved by 13%.
Wow.
To Labor's favor.
Well, wasn't the latest revelation, and forgive me because I haven't followed this too much, but wasn't the latest revelation that there was a scandal brewing, and that part of the reason why
30 MPs were 30 MPs were were investigated by the UK's version of the FBI for electoral fraud. They overspent the the limits for those campaign finance limits, and also they found that the Tory party had got drug money from HSBC. That's a recent scandal.
Yeah, so I imagine that's part of it, but I guess we'll see. But I can't wait until there are hearings where they start to do a dossier on her, and it involves your involvement, Sanjeeva.
Yeah, well,
We have the audio tape.
I just want to fuck Jim Messina, but
Well, all right. To each their own. He wanted to. I think you wanted to screw over.
screw with Jim Messina.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that sentiment. I hope you do.
Reminds. Yeah, Ryan.
All right, appreciate the call.
Well, yeah.
I wonder what polls are saying a 13% swing. That's significant.
Calling from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. It's Sebastian Gorka.
Hello, Seb. How are you? Dr. Gorka.
Seb. Dr. Gorka. Thank you, you Jew. I'm calling because I heard your comments on the show last week, and I have to say they're very offensive. I'm merely doing a population control, and so is my dad. So ask me, am I a Nazi?
Are you a Nazi?
No, I am not a social Jewish warrior like yourself. I'm merely
I
trying
didn't
to do
ask you that.
population
I asked you if you were a
control.
Nazi.
Social Jewish warrior.
Are you laughing at me?
No, with you,
Are you
Dr.
laughing
Gorka.
at me?
Were you the same one that called in last week and asked me whether you were talking to the funny one or the Jew?
This is offensive. Are you disrespecting dear Dad's legacy? He has a very strong legacy. I'm merely saying I am not a communist, nor have I ever been a social Jewish warrior. I'm merely doing the population control that my dear dad. And now, I'll say this. This is Richard Spencer, listener of your program. Now that I'm not in the Trump administration, I've
heard conflicting reports about this, that maybe you are not quite out yet.
We'll see. Maybe, hopefully. I have a lot to contribute, but if they don't need me at all, is Richard Spencer a listener? I will happy to meet him.
Well, I guess we'll find out.
Can I share my I have an observation on the Seb Gorka voice. It's very easy to make a Gorka sound. If you say, what sound does a Gorka make? And it reminds me of those.
Are you mocking me, Matt?
No, I'm putting you down because I'm making an observation. It sounds like digital, like when in front of a movie when they have those Dolby Digital surround sound demonstrations and they run through the bass frequencies. And that's what Gorka does with his voice.
You've been very influenced by hanging around social Jewish
the
warriors.
Call, Seb. But according to a report at the Forward, that seems to be like all that the Forward does now is just a report on Seb Gorka. But according to
Let's have some nosh and then write about Gorka again.
According to the Forward yesterday, Seb Gorka said that Trump promised, "I'm not leaving the White House." And then, of course, today there was a piece about did Gorka lie about his British military service?
Did I?
BuzzFeed apparently says that the British Ministry of Defense has no evidence Gorka worked in the 90s on counterterrorism and threat evaluation in Northern Ireland.
Here is a graph for you.
I was freelance.
My claims is on one side. On the other side, there is reality. Then in the middle, there's a circle which says money.
Do you think that I would have allowed them to make it public?
Ask me if I lied on my resume. Ask me.
Did you lie on your resume?
I am not a communist.
Ask me if I lied on my resume.
Did you lie on your resume?
My father is 72 years old.
Ask me if I lied on my resume.
Did you lie on your resume?
The Jews are out to get me, Henry. Good old Nixon.
Ask me if I lied on my resume.
Did you lie on your resume?
My Mustang has a overdrive 5-shift gear.
Ask me if I lied on my resume.
Did you lie on your resume?
I am an alpha male.
By the way, can we set aside some money? If
No, the boys are back in town.
if anyone can give us video footage of Seb Gorka driving in his Mustang, I'll pay you out of my own money.
I want to see a peel out.
Matt.
Could you imagine that he actually said
that? Calling from an 801 area code. Where are you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Thomas Taylor from Salt Lake City.
What's up, Thomas? Are you standing on the highway?
I'm just near a street.
Okay.
Anyway, I wanted to say that, I finished up my PhD dissertation in robotics last May, and it was getting pretty dark there, and your show helped keep me through it. So I became a member as soon as I got through that.
Well, let me give you one of these, but you got to explain why was things getting a little dark at in the robotics PhD?
Just there's something about that PhD dissertation that sucks all of the life and soul out of you.
Well,
and it makes the life look black and white and really depressing. But it's over now.
Homo says what?
The other thing I wanted to say is I've actually decided to run for Congress here in Salt Lake City against Congresswoman Mia Love.
Who are you running against? Oh, Mia Love. Right. All right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Which is actually the low-hanging fruit here in Utah. She only won by 5 points in 2014 and then 12.5 in 2016. But it's totally doable. And I just wanted to bring up that she's been pushing really hard for the so-called Choice Act. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's basically the Republican repeal of Dodd-Frank. And it's going to be a disaster for our economy and for regular people, and it's a big handout to all of the payday loan centers.
What do you have a website? Do you have a primary challenger? What's the status of the race?
Yeah, so right now there's 3 other people in the race. I'm fairly good friends with all of them. And everyone's pushing for a progressive agenda, which is actually what will win here in Utah. We've seen that if registered Democrats, and I'm not even talking about unaffiliated or registered independents, which we have a lot of in Utah, but just registered Democrats, if they come out to vote, we win this seat. And so I'm pretty optimistic about our chances. I have a website. It's www.tomforutah.com. And I'm also on Twitter at TomForUtah.
THOM?
TOMFORUTAH.
And so now, if you feel comfortable with the other people who are running, I mean, what are you going to bring that the others aren't?
So there's a couple of things. One, I've decided to plant my flag down for Medicare for all. The others haven't totally done that yet, and I think it's important. And also, I'm running on fighting climate change, which I think needs more talk in the political sphere. It gets forgotten way too often, and so. And the other thing is, I believe that we need people in science and technology in Congress. It kind of makes me bang my head against a wall when I hear people debating things that have actual answers based in evidence, and the questions they're asking or the things they're saying make it clear that they don't understand the underlying issues. And so that's one reason that I wanted to run is to help get some people that understand science and technology and up on the hill.
All right. Well, if people want more information, we're going to put Tom for Utah on our website at majority.fm. Thanks for calling in. Appreciate it.
Good luck, Tom.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye. I hope he's out
That was
campaigning.
exciting.
He's got a good website.
He does it. Does
Yeah, he's got a real.
impressive.
Yeah, he's running for Congress. It's a real. I mean, we need to get him more Twitter followers.
Let's put a link.
There is a link. I tweeted out, and there will be a link.
Calling from a 330 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Ryan from Ohio.
Hello.
I just had a public service announcement.
Yes.
I took a job on Craigslist a couple weeks ago. Been out here at the Climate March and the Science March, and they're trying to pay us in George Soros fun bucks. This is outrageous.
So they're not actually giving you dollars. They're just giving you. What do the fun bucks allow you to do? Can you go on a website? Can you get swag from like resistance T-shirts from Cap or something? What does that get you?
Well, it says here they're only good at Comet Ping Pong Pizza for all your pepperoni and pedophilia needs.
Okay.
I don't really know what that means.
Are you anywhere close to a Comet Pizza or?
Not at all. So, as you can imagine, these don't do me any good.
Well, what we'll do is we'll put you on hold, and our producer will come on the line and take your address, and we'll have
I'll
those
convert
sent
those
to
for
us.
you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the call.
Oh, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Got off of the Democratic plantation.
Let's go to the IMs. Hey, gang, says Cuddle Monkey and the man. Tell
You
me,
remember
Lauren,
that reference, right?
Cuddle Monkey and the man? You mean as opposed to, what's that?
Dennis Miller, man.
Oh, is it?
That was Dennis Miller.
Oh,
commanding
and the
that bill.
D-man.
That's the
Oh,
D-man.
Cuddle Monkey and the D-man. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, gang. Tommy Lauren gets fired. Alex Jones lost his child custody case. Cuddle Monkey and the D-man, my OTP, are off the air. And now Gorka is in limbo. We're running out of right-wingers to lampoon. Trump will always be a good source of humor. But who are we going to make fun of now? Pence? Gross. Does Michael even have a Pence impression? What do we do? Have you even heard Pence put together more than like 5 words at a time?
No, I have not. No, we did. We did the when he did the debate with Kane. What you noticed was that he has the sanctimonious face that you're making right now, and then there's also, I think the dynamic with Pence is just that like the veneer of being a nice guy is so wafer thin, and he's obviously such a massive asshole that But I heard, but Toby Lauren is very active. Someone sent me, Milton Apathy just sent me that she said one of her main jobs in journalism is to help white people stop being afraid of black people. So
Tommy Lauren?
Yeah. So I think Tommy Lauren will have a lot more content for all of us.
She
Alex
knows her mission.
Jones, I mean, him not having his kids isn't going to stop him from producing all sorts of, do you think that Alex Jones is going to be emotionally affected enough by not having his kids?
Would you do
stop
more
producing
videos
content?
if all of a sudden you didn't have your kids, Sam?
Oh my God, I would double my my YouTube output.
That's right. For all of the complaining about how he doesn't
But
have to
now,
have a social
the-
life, that's
but
what she
I
would,
will
that's
say,
exactly what
well,
she would
wait
do.
a second. But in my defense, they would all be videos of me playing video games. Bertold Meck. So one thoughtful reaction to the good interview. One take so hot it burned through my pants. It gave me a burn around my crotch. Weighing in on the UBI versus full employment issue. I tend to take Spross's view that proponents of each shouldn't be at each other's throats, minus the disingenuous libertarian supporters of UBI. Rather, should be part of a platform including postal public banking and land value taxes. The key factor to all these programs is that in some incomplete fashion or another, all are extant in the USA right now. Weighing on a Radiohead, pure liquid sewage, likenable to what Dave Matthews Band dumped into the Chicago River, the root cause of Coldplay. Bad band that is as overrated as, insert most extreme metaphor indicating overratedness.
Okay.
He didn't like Radiohead.
I
MMT
got-
is a
got that
reality
part.
with quantitative easing. We just don't see it. Sovereign wealth depends on military and financial hegemony. The increased supply to avoid hyperinflation is reflected in Honduras and now Brazil, not just China. Very questionable stuff in there. Come on, Sammy, embrace socialism. I'll light up a votive candle for you at Our Lady Guadalupe for you. Butt crack biker. Guest recommendation. A guy named Andrew Jackson. Supposedly he knows about the Civil War thing nobody ever talks about. Daddy Zang, tell Matt to browse neweconomicperspective.org. That is the website with those folks. To learn MMT. It's the blog for economics department at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Randall Ray is also associated with the Levy's Economic Institute, which your guest referred to. Levy Economic Institute is right up the road here at Bard College, I believe. And I think Richard Wolff is from there as well. Colin Doucet. Why is Samantha Bee so anti-Bernie? She called him a mansplaining prick and said he's throwing women and people of color under the bus.
She said that?
Rainmaker's a really underrated movie. I haven't seen that. Michael's right.
Yeah, Rainmakers, you would actually like it. So.
I will. I'll do that.
Yeah, you should watch it. Yeah, she said that about Bernie Sanders?
I don't know.
Jesus
Cuckold.
Christ.
Kelton Todd at University of Missouri, Kansas City just recently announced she's moving to New York to teach at Stony Brook. Oh, great. Josh, 88. Can Michael do a Sam impression of Sam being up in Vegas on a coke-fueled gambling spree only to lose his money on an ill-advised and reckless bet?
I thought I did that last week. Oh, ill-advised and reckless.
I feel so invincible right now. I would say, God damn it, this hurts my nose. There is only going to be 3 members of the Tuesday caucus that will sign on to the health care plan, and I'll bet you $10,000. Make it a bet just like Mitt Romney. Oh, no, there was 4. I'm doomed. Where did all my bar mitzvah money go?
MMT is very simple. Federal government spends money into existence and taxes it out of existence. The real cost of federal government spending is resources, not dollars. Jay-Z, on behalf of Prime Minister May Bott, I would like to wish the Majority Report crew and all listeners strong and stable day, strength through stability, stability through strength. Hesper Yuzvamulk. I finally got around to listening to the Love Contract, and now I'm very concerned. Matt, Kelly, blink once if Michael can be trusted, blink twice if he's been assimilated. On a related note, I find it hilarious that a host expected listeners not to believe there are places where employees can be relocated for having a relationship with a coworker, since it was just last year that my sister was pressured into resigning after she informed her boss that she was engaged to a coworker. What host? This was an advertiser?
They're talking about a podcast that that was on our show several months ago that they got around to listening to. I don't remember the name of it.
Oh.
It was an advertiser. And they listened.
To the Love Contract?
That was the name. It was a show that was doing like radio plays essentially, and one of the radio plays was called The Love Contract.
Ah, okay. I know which one. I mean, I vaguely remember the.
I think you listened to the JFK one. We split them up a bit.
Yeah, what were those?
I don't remember.
There was an overarching name.
I know. I don't remember that.
Okay. Well. And sometimes try. I'm fairly ignorant on economics. I typically let others, you guys, do my homework for me. But regarding job guarantee program, would it be plausible that willing private companies could partner with such a program as a contractor for things like training and job placement? What might that look like? How stupid am I? No, I think that's a legitimate question. I don't think it's necessary. Again, I think for the most part, these jobs would be for low-skill jobs, for the most part. It's not inconceivable that you would have, but I mean, we have government work for skilled jobs that exist. So
yeah, there could be white-collar jobs for these things.
No,
or skills.
But I'm saying you wouldn't necessarily have those as guaranteed. I mean, it's an employer of last resort. We already have the government in the business of doing sort of white-collar hiring.
Right.
More of that, though, would be good.
Yeah, why not more of that, too?
It's not inconceivable to me, I guess, that if a community needed, let's say, a comptroller for something,
Right.
but, I mean, theoretically, I don't know. It would throw off the cost.
There might be more needs for that type of thing, though, if you had this public option jobs program. There's Jeremy Rifkin in The End of Work in the 1990s actually advocated something like this. So some of the roots of the idea.
One more, Nick. All I want is someone like Bernie to go on Kimmel's show and say to his face, Republicans do not believe that your child should live if you cannot afford it, period. I mean, just the fact that Kimmel acknowledged that not long ago people with pre-existing conditions couldn't get insurance but could not acknowledge that politicians were why that was the case shows the disconnect. Yeah, I wonder about that. I may do.
Don't you think it's still a net positive, his intervention?
I do think it's a net positive. But it comes at a great cost, which is this continuing. I think it's at a net positive. Let me put it
sort
that
of
way.
better tactically than strategically.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was the earlier
You know,
conversation.
I'm not sure if we needed it tactically. And I wonder, you know, well, no, it's a net positive. It's a net positive. But it is, it's really problematic that people have that perspective.
I have one other quick question about it. if
I
you
may
have time.
sent a couple of texts off about this.
I have no doubt that I'm surprised you haven't already. Can I give you one more
I
quick
just didn't have time.
Quick question about this?
Yes.
Do you think that they're not in any way the same, but there is a odd connection between this sort of like there's this way of being depoliticized the way we talked about with Jimmy Kimmel, where we're kind of assuming the good in everyone, and then there's the Alex Jones, everything's a Burrow conspiracy, and you can't really actually influence anything in a real way, and so in a bizarre way you get depoliticized that way as well.
Yes.
Yeah, those are sort of like
They're cousins.
Okay.
Calling from a 519 area code. Who's this? And coincidentally, Jimmy Kimmel and Alex Jones are actual cousins.
I could see it.
That's not true. You're calling from a 519 area code. Who's this?
Oh, hello.
Hello? Who's
Is this
this?
me?
Yes.
Ah, perfect. All right, great. My name is Chris from Ontario.
Hello, Chris. Knew you were
I
Canadian.
called you guys once. I am a Canadian.
Knew it.
And I'm going to see what the phone bill is like. But anyway, worth it. So I called you guys once back in August, I think, about Civil War and cucks. And since
I
the
do
Civil War
remember
is-
this call. Yes,
You're
I had
like an
threatened
actual scholar.
to do a podcast around you.
Yeah, I sent you guys an email, but I guess it got lost in the mail, so to speak. I mean, things did kind of explode after August. so
Yes, indeed.
with the late unpleasantness.
We all got cooked.
But anyway, sorry?
Sorry.
Oh, I just missed that. Sorry. Anyway, so I wanted to give you guys a call because of Trump's, or Professor Trump, should I say, his comments on the Civil War, very incisive observations. And it's actually pretty interesting beyond kind of the basic observations I think people have been making about it. I mean, you know, on the kind of on the floor level of it, obviously he's an idiot. And spoiler alert, Jackson was dead long before the Civil War started. But what's interesting is he's really participating in a really larger kind of historiographical conversation about the Civil War, which is really relevant to conservatism today, I think at least. And you can kind of trace it back to the kind of the mythology of the war itself, right? So right at the end of the Civil War, and I mean like right after, like before the Confederacy's even properly surrendered, when Lee surrenders to General Grant at Appomattox, one of the observers, Russell from the London Times, writes a really amazing editorial about it. And he writes that this extraordinary surrender demonstrates that America might be a great nation, and in fact might be the greatest of all nations. It's quite an admission from the London Times, which was pretty much pro-Confederate, anti-Union for the entire war. But he based it on the supposition that the surrender is a gentleman's agreement, that that Lee has very willingly acquiesced to the Union, and the country will be reconstructed. And it's based on a lie. In actual point of fact, there's nothing gentlemanly about the surrender at Appomattox. Lee is trying to position Grant to help him recreate a Union where Virginia's still in charge, and in turn, Grant is trying to position Lee in a position where he is going to help reform the South. So they're really following the first salvos of what's going to become the Reconstruction conflict. But what's amazing is this mythology really actually creates a reconstructed Union. I would argue, at least, the key to Reconstruction is the shared belief that no one was wrong in the Civil War. The most amazing example of this was General Gordon, who was a Klansman, leader of the United Confederate Veterans, who famously said at a major multiple armies reunion, when the Union veterans were complaining about pro-Confederate histories becoming the standard in the South, complained that his brothers in arms in the North would tried to dismiss the Southern history and insisted, my friends in the late conflict, you were right, but so were we. And then this mythology metastasized into what's called the avoidable war thesis. And the avoidable war thesis is basically that bumbling politicians or a tyrannical Lincoln or conniving abolitionists forced the war unnecessarily, that slavery was dying of natural causes. The war was completely, basically unnecessary. And this idea really comes to fruition in the 20th century. Narrative. Of course the war wasn't over slavery because the South weren't bad guys. And to create this memory, the requirement to be destroyed.
So
when Trump participates,
everything to Clint Eastwood movies, but this is very much consistent with Josie Wales, with the outlaw Josie Wales.
It kind of reminds me of what the guy was saying yesterday, actually.
Outlaw Josie Wales, of course, he doesn't surrender, and in the end, he is allowed to just go live in peace, and walks into the sun for the first time.
And it's funny that
was
you
it
bring
also though?
Hold on, wait a second. I'm getting his
On Josie,
reaction to Josie Wales.
Could we? Okay, I wanted to link it to yesterday,
Well,
but go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's interesting you bring up, because I haven't seen that. I haven't watched a lot of Clint Eastwood, I have to admit. But from what I know of them, from the Westerns, what's interesting you bring that up, because the Western genre in general is a good analogy for this. If you watch these old Westerns, the Civil War is always a thing that happened. It's the late unpleasantness. A thing happened, like take True Grit. Turns out, okay, one of them's an ex-Confederate who was a partisan ranger, and one of them was a regular soldier in Richard Taylor's Army of the Red River, right? At least I think. He implies he was. But it's the thing that happened. We're not going to talk about it. It's a thing that we all experience.
With Josie Wales, his whole fight against the Union was a function of the Redlegs, of the regiments that went in that were supposedly specifically oriented towards burning down Southern civilian houses and whatnot.
Yeah. The sounds like either Jayhawkers or Sherman's men.
But is
Sorry,
this?
go on.
But yesterday, the professor who we had on yesterday, talking about conservative parties and democracy, was also talking first, about how aristocratic parties establish bases in democracy. But then you were talking about basically in transition periods, how do you accommodate the old regimes in some sense in order to create a new political state? So is there some analogy with that?
Totally. Yeah, hugely analogous. Because a major part of the Civil War, and I didn't want to get into the causation because, you guys don't have like 5 hours to talk about that, but a major part of what people don't get is to preserve slavery, but there's several reasons why they want to preserve slavery. And a key one is because the South is trying to preserve basically political hegemony in the United States. The majority of former presidents were all Southrons, slave owners. The few that weren't were called dough-faces, which basically meant that they were Northern but supported Southern views. The South dominated Supreme Court. The South dominated legislation. The South dominated the whole system. And in the South itself, the elite slave class made the state legislatures. South Carolina, they chose the presidential election.
Why did the South dominate? Why did the South dominate so much?
There's a couple reasons for that. A big part of it is the 3/5 clause, which gave them overrepresentation in the House. And a major part of it is that's where the money was. The money in America before the Civil War is coming from the South. The South was so wealthy that if you include the slaves, who obviously not making much money, that's 4 million people, include them, your average Southron is making about 2/3 of a Yankee. But remember, Yankees actually are free laborers. So even including slaves, they're making that much.
Wow.
In the great economic recession of 1857, as I'm going to forget his name now, it's really embarrassing, Senator Hammond declared, we have come, people of the North, we have come with 4 billions, I think it was 4 billions anyway, of wagons of cotton, and we have saved you, for cotton is king. They're the economic powerhouse. And they were the old Southern leadership. They were it was kind of assumed the South should be in charge in a lot of ways, as weird as that sounds. But that's kind of where it's hard to trace exactly when it happens, but a lot of it has to do with the money. Because really, between the Revolution and industrialization, the North is kind of at a weird transitionary point, and their economy is not as strong. It's after the Civil War, when the Southern economy is ravaged by it, and their whole social system is upheaved, that we get a succession of Northern presidents right up until Woody Wilson.
Interesting.
So that's a big part of it. But it's mostly because the Three-Fifths Clause overrepresented slave power, and slave casts themselves were the richest people in America. Right, so the original question about the preserving power. So basically, in many respects, it's a kind of Jim McPherson actually calls the whole Civil War, the fighting part of it, a preemptive counter-revolution. It's the Ancien regime realizing things are about to change because they have a country bumpkin, anti-slavery candidate no one's ever heard of, and now he's the president on an anti-slavery platform. So clearly the regime's can change. We don't get to pick the president anymore, so we're going to make our own country where we get to stay in charge. When the war is over, there is this radical period where they try to tear the whole damn thing down. The first black governors in U.S. history are in Virginia, Mississippi. The first black senator is going to take the seat from Mississippi once held by the Honorable Jeff Davis. Things are turned on their head.
Yeah, you're only going to get about 15 years of that.
Yeah, well, it didn't last very long. It was really only about 5 years of solid Reconstruction where we have black people in charge, and basically being the first competent leaders of those states probably since the history of the Union.
Those were the worst years in our history.
Jeff Sessions, I'd love to hear his opinion on the matter.
The horrible. We call those the tragic times.
We call those the years that Cotton cried tears of pain.
I call that the knob.
We call those the dark years, if you understand what I'm saying.
See, I'm a member of a certain secret society.
Well, it's funny because that's a huge part of it. With the Ku Klux Klan, if you ever read Woodrow Wilson's writings, as he was a historian before he became president, he writes really incisive, and I mean not incisive as in correct, incisive as in just, if nothing else, what's the word I'm looking for? Very helpful essay in understanding this white Southern kind of view of this. He writes an essay about the Ku Klux Klan as the secret defenders of the South, who exist by necessity because they must use extra legal means to maintain the social order. That is how he sees the Klan.
A homosexual, but a brilliant homosexual, Woodrow Wilson.
Too bad it's Milt Paul. All right.
Jeff Sessions'
All right.
view of it.
I got to jump.
Probably would be that.
Fascinating stuff. Thanks so much for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime.
Okay, bye-bye. I got to get back on that podcast. I feel like I could listen to them for like another 5 hours. All right, one last phone call. Sorry, don't have time to take more than one. You calling from an 847 area code. Who's this?
Hey, Sam. This is Gabe from Chicago.
Gabe, what's on your mind?
Hey, first of all, I'd like to make a call for less quantity and more quality in listener Gorka impressions.
Fair enough.
They're good when they're funny, but when there's too much, it ruins it.
I understand.
Fair point. Second of all, so there's two things that I kind of want to take your temperature on, but you probably don't want to do both. So would you rather talk about your Uyghur interview in Vegas or the budget briefing conference call?
Oh, boy, that's tough. I like both those topics. Let's just go with Uyghur, then we'll do the budget.
So you guys kind of recapped for like 2 minutes after the talk, and it kind of sounded like he may have swayed you a little bit. And I just wanted to see if you had any follow-up, if he was able to convince you that the Article 5 solution is more feasible. And I'm glad to take your answer off the air.
Okay. I mean, I still have, and I think someone sent me, and I've got so much just sort of notes that I'm still sort of wading through. I look in general, and I think my position is more or less stayed the same, which is like, I wouldn't discourage it. I am not as, the bottom line is everything is theoretical on this. I don't think there is evidence that this would necessarily lead to something bad, but I don't think there's evidence that it necessarily would be that it wouldn't. I mean, all I can tell you is that under an Article 5 convention, nothing is decided there. it all goes back to the states. I imagine that for whatever reason these conventions are called, that there would be an opportunity to pass other resolutions that would come back to the states. And, you know, there's an argument that you can't do that, but I'm not quite convinced, like, who's going to adjudicate this? The Supreme
I'll
Court?
take care of those matters.
I mean, so look, Lawrence Lessig argues that, you know, the movement itself could be enough could force the hands of other people. Maybe. You know, there's some stuff about how other, you know, and he's specifically talking about Common Cause. I don't know that much about them, but it sounds like they're acting really strangely and irresponsible in this context. So I don't think that my mind has been changed. It's always been, I've been somewhat ambivalent about it, and I am concerned. And so we'll find out. I mean, I'm going to keep looking, but I don't, my sense is at this point, there is no definitive answer. And, but I'm not convinced that it's taking away valuable resources from anywhere else. I mean, you know, they're doing the Justice Democrats, which I think is actually, you know, like I am much less ambivalent about. I'm actually supportive of. So, but I don't think the exercise in and of itself is necessarily a bad thing. I just am not. I'm concerned about it, and I don't know, and you know, that's that. All right, don't have time for any more calls. Blink, blink. Sorry about that. I know that we had a couple of people holding for a while, but we got some IMs. I'm going to do a couple, and then we'll do, then we'll go through. David Slack, why is Trump focusing on immigrants taking American jobs when economists predict that Ryan Seacrest will have every job by 2020? Nuclear Negroid, Sam, it took you 24 hours to shit on the positive influence of Kimmel's monologue on healthcare debate. Why so long? I feel like yesterday I was a little bit skeptical. But again, I say it's a net positive. But the whole part of disaffecting people from politics, I find, you know, it's bothering me. According to hunky sociopath Paul Ryan, Kimmel's kid should have pulled himself up by his booty straps. Attorney Andrew, as a follow-up to Kimmel on the depoliticization of politics, I would suggest people read Luke Savage's piece in Current Affairs titled How Liberals Fell in Love with the West Wing.
It's great. Big recommendation. Co-sign on that. Great piece.
I have flagged that. I cannot tell you the amount of people I went to school with and work with who believed that President Bartlett was the ideal liberal president, but also hate poor, seek out compromise like it's required sustenance, and view the political divides in America as the product of smart versus the non-smart. I'm also certain Robbie Mook loves the West Wing, and Aaron Sorkin is personally responsible for our current predicament. Lastly, can you all talk about Chukwa Lumumba, who just won the mayoral race in Jackson, Mississippi? I can tell you what I know about him, which is not that much. His father was a mayor who apparently just recently passed away. He won this race in Jackson, Mississippi. He is, I think you could probably say, a radical in the context of this. His father just passed away. He's 34 years old. His parents were radicals. He had lost the 2014 mayoral election. And I don't, have, let's see, I'm trying to think of like, if I can see what his specific policies are, but he's a member of the Malcolm X grassroots movement, which I suspect is not sort of down the line moderate Democratic organization.
It doesn't sound like Mary Landrieu is the co-chair.
He is a founding member of the Mississippi Human Rights Collective. They fought to take down the flag, the Confederate flag from the Mississippi State House. He serves as the media representative for the Coalition for Economic Justice. Was instrumental in co-authoring the People's Platform. He's got a general election in June against the Republicans. I don't know. I'll look more into him. That's all I know about him at this time. Edgewater Joe. Jim Comey actually used the words, quote, when the Anthony Weiner thing landed on me. You know my theory about why why those emails were there, right?
No.
Because Anthony Weiner was so desperate to be plugged into what was going on.
Right.
I think he logged into his wife's email account.
Man.
I honestly think that's it, so he could get a sense of what was going on. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me, totally. The idea that she would use his laptop, maybe they went on vacation and he took his, but why would he take his as opposed to her taking hers?
Yeah.
Sounds to me like she was constantly in contact. Edgewater Joe, the DX Fool. Hi, I wonder what you think Monday was the day that Kimmel became, to paraphrase Van Jones, presidential. Andrew from Idaho tried to explain we all agree on healthcare thing to a fairly liberal friend and it fell flat. You're right that this exposes a flaw in the Obama-Clinton Democratic perspective. This is a conversation we need to be having. Thank you for spending time on it. Well, thank you. And to those who were getting cynical about me being cynical. Spinster, Sam, Jackman podcast had an interview on the country of Georgia because apparently it's a libertarian government. Just thought you'd like to look into this. Yeesh. All right, let's... Other mailman, canceled for a while for financial reasons, sign back up. Does membership through website put more in your pockets than Patreon? Yeah, we prefer people just to become members, but the Patreon is more of a YouTube-y thing. Okay, Trust Fund Kelly. Oh, my God, leave trust funds alone, you guys. I know one that I like. So criticizing that fact that wealth limits your experience of poverty, sympathy, not empathy, is valid because I like my friend. All right. Final IMs.
Honestly, I mean, people listen to, it just seems to me like people listen to certain shows or this show to hear one thing. Grow up.
It's just an IMer. One IM. Okay. Matt.
K.
Cust Fund Kelly. I'm joking. K Tamp. I can't read all this. Read the Civil War conversation. My M from yesterday. Reported on Friday in the Tampa Bay Times. The proposal to recreate the first slavery memorial in Florida blocked by Republican state senators' philosophical objection. Yeah, sorry. I will get to that story tomorrow.
Objection.
Kelly.
I'm on strike.
F.
I'm on strike fund Kelly. Now, what is it?
L.
Letter carrier. Would you guys be able to clip today's talk about Mr. Kimmel and the ACH and the HACA? Yes.
F.
Guys, will you make a note of that? F. Facepalm USA. Active shooter at Northlake College near Dallas. A guaranteed work program could help communities subsidize high skill positions. Public defenders come to mind first. City or local government would have to match minimum wage. If it's $32K a year, the local government has to match it, creating a $64,000 job. Interesting. Thames Darwin. This is a great exposition of the depravity of the GOP. None of its people defending the pre-existing condition law is David effing Gergen, advisor to Ford, Nixon, and Reagan. By the way, Sam, how much of this Kimmel business is personal, i.e. Silverman related? None at all. I met Jimmy, had dinner at his house a couple of times.
I hate
nice.
you, Jimmy. Sarah, and now you depoliticize people. How dare you?
The Sarah thing I can get over, but the depoliticization.
Look,
apparently
Sarah is all in the game, but depoliticizing people?
Beyond the pale. All right, Matt. A asthmatic Grapefruit Clinton. Next time you decide to do Ken, can you do a Pajama Boys show instead? A Dumb Left parody show? Michael can break out as Jimmy Dore. Starting to feel real nervous about unity on the left. Explain why the Bernie HRC camps infighting isn't going to be worse than Jesse Jackson and Ralph Nader camps, sniting 2 terms of Reagan and Bush. Thank you. I have some concerns about it, but I don't think it's as big. I think now we have a tendency to sort of perceive these things as larger than they are because of Twitter. I think it is an ongoing problem, but I think it will not impact the 2018 elections, in my estimation. And if the Democrats take Congress, I think you're going to find that the will to take on Trump and make it ugly for him will be far greater than in any other president that I've ever seen. And I think that's going to hurt his chances in 2020. Who just gave me that letter? Kelly, give me a letter. Oh, gosh. You don't have to if you want to sit around out.
No, D.
Seriously? What? Seriously? Yeah. Okay. I'm joking. Denver Dave. Look at the bigly brain on that Canadian. Pictures of Steve Bannon's whiteboard to-do list have been revealed. When will you release yours to-do list, Sam? And what percentage of it will be related to Social Security actuarial analysis? Well, there's Medicare.
We'd release a picture, but it's just a calendar from 2016 sometime.
Exactly. Michael. C. Cuck Todd. Great time at the White House Correspondents' Dinner after parties. My wife's keys into the punch bowl. Is it still a wife swap if I went home alone? No follow-up. Hashtag no follow-up question. I got invited to the after party.
Why didn't you go, buddy?
Well, I had my...
You weren't able to do it.
I had my, what do you call it?
Were you still in Vegas?
No. I was at my, the co-op preschool.
Indeed, right.
I had to do the auction.
All right,
But I could have
everyone.
gone to the, Young Turks had a some type of like correspondence dinner. I could have gone to that and then the after party. But frankly, with all due respect, I didn't really want to go to either.
Yeah, whatever.
That was not, if I get like 6-8 hours like that. Now, I could have seen going down to D.C., pretending I was going and just stay in the hotel and watch, like action films.
Action films.
Yes.
You heard it here, folks.
Michael.
I already gave you one.
Cuck. All right, I'm going to do
Right.
I'm not going to do Easy Bake Gatic. SBG. Criticize the particulars of Kimmel's statement, but he's using the megaphone to reel net positive. The actually crowd looks terrible in response. No, I totally agree. Net, and, this is not a show. I would not go on and make this point too ham-fisted if I was on, let's say, Hayes' program. I would raise it.
If you were on that show later in the show, would you have brought it up, though? Probably.
If I was on his show?
Yeah. Like if you were like the second guest that night.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
I hope everyone will see my new romantic comedy where I play the best friend of the main character, and you depoliticize people, sir.
Listen. Honestly, I don't want this to be overinterpreted. I think what he did, in the context of what he does, was really great, and it was I found it very moving. But nevertheless, I do think this is a bigger problem. I mean, it's almost like the equivalent of Kelly Ripa going like, prayers do get answered. Well, prayers? No, it was the doctors. It was science.
I give Bradley Cooper romantic advice as a grouchy but avuncular older friend in this film, and you don't understand how politics works, Jimmy.
I don't even know if I would spend that much time on the film. I wouldn't want to eat up my time.
Right.
All right, Matt, one more round.
Jay.
Jay it is.
Jade Helm.
Jorge. Sam, congratulations on your huge Vegas wins. I paid for my mathematics degree at UC Berkeley playing online poker when it was legal. Also, Michael's best impression is Super Jewy Sam. Kelly.
I don't actually agree with that, but it is fun.
Kelly.
T.
Could anything be worse than having to give a letter?
Fighting over here.
Online?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, is this coming from you? I don't want to hear it.
No T. Okay. There's no T. You want to do about Hugo Ball, too. It's like telling Ronald Reagan and Mindy that they're both allowed to participate in the red carpet step and repeat for the first annual Matthew Film Guy Fest, but only letting Mindy do it. I don't even know what that means.
I don't understand. And I'm going
Michael.
to say A.
A. Didn't you do an A last time?
I did not.
Give me a new one.
E.
E. All right. Easy bake, beta cuck. Can you please get Daryl Perry back? I bet it'll only take a couple of tweets from us exercising our liberty to get that dope.
No. Daryl Perry is not talking to
And
Sam
the final
again.
I am of the day. Historic Larry. We just have to keep talking about all the beautiful babies that will suffer if Obamacare is repealed, and then maybe Trump will shoot 59 cruise missiles at something. If you ever wonder what happens at a botched late-term abortion, look no further than Mick Mulvaney. With the Stars and Stripes Forever playing over Mulvaney's call, I can only imagine sparklers and fireworks going off all around him. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I get some